Welcome to the Pilates Physios, where anatomy meets abs and science meets sweat. I'm Tanya Winter, physiotherapist and co-founder of Studio Pilates International. I'm super passionate about making Pilates education better and training world-class Pilates instructors with real-world skills.
And I'm James Mangerhouse, a physiotherapist, course facilitator, and veteran Pilates instructor.
Together, we're diving into the world of Pilates from a physio's point of view, breaking down movement science, busting myths, sharing instructing tips, and helping you become the Pilates instructor everyone wants teaching their class.
So Tan, I just finished a course recently, actually yesterday, and we were talking about exercise programming as we always do, and a big question that came up, and it always comes up during courses, is pregnancy guidelines. And with Studio Pilates, we do have some specific pregnancy guidelines. And why do you think we have that? Especially some people think that the guidelines are a little bit restrictive or might be a little bit, I don't know, back in the olden days, sort of like ways of thinking.
Yeah. I mean, if you do the wrong thing exercise-wise when you're pregnant, it can have some really bad outcomes for you. As you know, from a physio background, and we've had lots of clients with this over the years, doing the wrong abdominal exercises can be really dangerous, and it can have long-lasting impacts on the woman. You can end up with the abdominals separating, maybe even need surgery to fix it down the track, and, also trying to keep baby safe and mum safe whilst you're exercising too. So there are a lot of people out there who have no pregnancy guidelines whatsoever. Quite scary. There's lots of courses that don't really cover any science-based pregnancy guidelines either, which means instructors are not learning how to take people through their pregnancy safely, which to me I find crazy, very concerning actually, and alarming. So, those guidelines do need to be there to keep both the mother and the baby safe, and to make sure that the mother's body, can recover afterwards as well, and she's not causing herself any harm throughout the pregnancy.
And what do you think about, let's say, for example, someone says to us that, to give people more information, like we do start to have some relatively rigid guidelines from second trimester onwards. It's like, we want to limit things like no sustained supine, direct abdominal exercises, inner thigh stuff, Some people might think that's a bit too rigid. And let's take, for example, a person who's like a high-level athlete, for example. They've, still been training quite a lot. They're still an active athlete, and they're stronger than the regular person. What should we think about when we start dealing with someone who's of that level but is getting pregnant or progressing through their pregnancy?
Sure, I think it depends on the issues that you're talking about. Everybody's going to be different. Like, I guess with the guidelines, usually somewhere around after the first trimester-ish, a lot of women don't find it super comfortable laying on their back. And regardless of how fit you are or not, that often makes no difference, because it's more about where the baby's sitting in your tummy, where your blood vessels lie in your tummy. If you're on your back for long periods of time, depending on where the baby's sitting, it can really squash those blood vessels, and mum can get dizzy and lack of oxygen. Baby can have the same, like the blood flow's not there. And irrespective of how fit you are, it's kind of just anatomy, and each pregnancy might be different for each person. So generally we'll say, somewhere at the end of first trimester, beginning of second trimester, just generally it's best to not lie on your back. Now, in saying that, some women feel amazing on their back through the whole pregnancy. So, if someone's like, I sleep on my back for 8 hours every night, well, good luck if you're sleeping 8 hours when you're pregnant. But you know what I mean? If they're lying on their back all night and they're not having any symptoms and no dizziness, no shortness of breath, they're probably going to be okay to lie on their back for short periods of time in their Pilates class.
Yeah.
So I think those types of things you can definitely have some leeway with. It's probably a bit crazy to say, no, you can't lie on your back when you're doing it for 8 hours a night. But then I think there's other things, and obviously the other risk during pregnancies, like overheating, overworking. Now, someone that's super fit, they're going to have way less risk of that. So they can probably work harder in general than someone who's not super fit. Yeah. But then if you think about the other restrictions that you have, generally it's like be very careful on your back after that first trimester. And then also lying on the stomach. Well, I mean, that's going to impact everyone, you know, once your baby shows. It's not going to be comfortable to lie on your stomach, or probably good for the baby. And in terms of working the abdominals, this is one of the things I think that there's most contention about. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
In the kind of Pilates and just fitness space in general, the risk of working your abs is obviously if you're doing too much of your rectus abdominis or six-pack muscles, once your baby starts to show, those muscles are kind of really stretching out over your baby and they're already on length. And if you really work those muscles too hard, obviously sometimes it doesn't feel good, you know, anyway, having a baby in there and doing that. But some people actually go, oh, it feels okay. And they want to keep working their abs because they're very fit. They don't want to stop exercising. But you do run the risk of those muscles separating if you're working them too hard, particularly if you're someone that's not super tall. Because your abs are going to stretch out further. Often the women that have, you know, Victoria's Secret model height might be able to have less risk of that. But, you know, the more your belly stretches out, the more your abs have to stretch. Working your abdominals, doing crunches or even like planks and hardcore abs over the top of a, you know, belly that's protruding, you really increase that risk of those muscles separating. And it's, you know, that can have, it's long term. Sometimes they don't come back together. Sometimes you need surgery. You know, you end up with all sorts of back problems. So in general, you know, when you're training people to be instructors, you want people to err on the side of caution rather than, you know, hurting people. You don't want to be the person that is giving someone an issue, you know.
Yeah, of course. And also we got to think about it too, you know, like if we're doing reformer classes, for example, and it's a pregnancy-based reformer class, if there's going to be several people in that class, you want to definitely be erring on the side of caution. You know, you might want to be able to take care of someone who is a bit of a higher level, higher sort of physical capacity in that class, but maybe you could probably just do that for that particular person. You know, like it's always best to, I guess, like from my opinion, to start off on the lower end of the spectrum so that everyone can do the exercises and do the exercises safely, and then modify based on how the person's feeling in that day, or, you know, the people that you have actually in the class, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I think that's a really good point. When you're taking a group class, it is also harder to individualize at times, as opposed to when you're taking a one-on-one, because you can probably communicate with that woman on how she's feeling in that moment. So it probably also depends on the setting too.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, like, you know, we can think about it in terms of the types of people that we've taken. You know, I like to think of a few particular people that I've had in the past where they've just absolute beasts during their normal, like, you know, everyday life when they're not pregnant. But, you know, come 14, 15 weeks, this person on crutches because, you know, their belly's become so big and their joints have become quite loose. So, you know, even then for that person, all of the limitations go out of the window. They basically stop exercising completely. So it's good to have a bit of a, I guess, you know, relatively, how could you say, safe way, well, not even safe, but you just want to be on the side of caution for your limitations, right? And then let's say, for example, if some of your clients do get it a bit better or have more capacity to do it, then you can increase it from there, you know? So in that way, like, you know, you don't go too hard, too fast, and all of a sudden a problem sort of occurs, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's interesting. You talk about the musculoskeletal side of things. We've talked about the lying on the back and the stomach. We've talked about not overworking those six-pack muscles. In saying that, you can still do some Pilates basic abdominal exercises. You can still do some of the side lying exercises that work more your obliques and obviously your pelvic floor and transversus, as opposed to working that rectus abdominis six-pack. But what are your thoughts on, you know, restrictions or modifications, and what issues do you see people come in with musculoskeletally, like with backs and hips and whatever?
Yeah, look, I mean, this is anecdotally, of course. We're not really going to have like a full systematic review of anything like that. But like most of the time, we'll see things like lower backs and groins are the big one that you'll see as pregnancy starts to progressing and mature, you know, and that kind of makes sense. Do you know what I mean? Like belly's starting to get bigger, postural changes, and in terms of joint instability, et cetera, things are going to happen more so at the pelvis, right? Because that's where baby's just chilling out, you know? So I think that's the main type of issues that you'll sort of see. especially when it comes to the day-to-day stuff, like having trouble getting out of the car, walking around, like you'll see commonly a lot of people they'll just start decreasing in terms of their mobility as, they get to, the later stages of pregnancy,
Yeah, oh, I know. I was a prime example of that. I was so fit and strong before. And yeah, I had epic pelvic instability and pubic symphysis and sacroiliac joint issues. And I was someone that thought I would be able to, really exercise quite hard the whole way through. And, that's not always the case. So you just never know, I guess, what's to come. But I mean, in saying that, doing the right type of exercises can really help those pregnancy issues, like if you're strengthening your buttock muscles, that's going to really help stabilize your pelvis. If strengthening your transversus and pelvic floor, same thing. But there's, certain movements, of course, that might exacerbate it. And that's why I guess those are in our guidelines to be very careful with and avoid any of those movements where you're opening the legs out to the side for, pubic bone issues. As you said before, that, groin and hip issues, being careful with inner thigh exercises for that reason. I know like a lot of the asymmetrical glute exercises aren't good, ones where the legs are separating. So, I think that's really important. There's such common things that people have that we need to be teaching that to instructors, right? Because, a lot of people do Pilates courses, become instructors because they want to take pregnant people. So, it's crazy to me that you don't learn all the ins and outs of how to, help someone that's pregnant and keep them safe.
Yeah, exactly. And the last point that we were talking about with some of the students yesterday was, when it comes to, and, feel free to disagree with me or not, but when it comes to exercising whilst pregnant, I think it's something to keep a close mind of is that, generally speaking, you're not going to get to the point where the person's physical conditions are going to drastically improve. You're not going to get someone who's going to start training and all of a sudden they get like massively stronger or like, or anything like that. So even in terms of people talking about like exercise intensity or just maintaining or doing whatever they used to do, it's kind of, I'm not necessarily sure if that's the best way to go about it. Like you want to think about trying to do exercise whilst pregnant to help maintain your body, but also sort of keep you in a good position so that when you are not pregnant anymore and you want to return to sport or do all the other things that you like to do in life, that you're in a good position to do that. That you haven't beaten your body up just because you like training, which obviously everyone likes to do, but you want to get to the point where, your stomach, your hips and everything like that are strong enough so that, you can start to rebuild yourself after pregnancy and get back to all those things that you like faster than if you just kind of just crush yourself the whole time. Yeah. Yeah,
agree. I mean, you're not going to get epic amounts of gains in pregnancy. Unfortunately, you kind of start to.
Yeah.
So it is trying to maintain, whatever exercise you can do. And I mean, some women feel amazing and, envious of those women.
Yeah.
And they can do a lot of exercise, obviously within the guidelines of avoiding all of the positions that they shouldn't be doing, and other people really can't. So it's important to try and do what you can to keep as good as you can, as you say. And then afterwards, if you've done Pilates and done the right thing through your pregnancy, it should be easier afterwards to get back that strength and stability. The interesting thing I found when I was a new mum too is just how much arm strength you need.
Yeah.
Like you're lugging your prams in and out of cars, holding babies.
Yeah.
You really need a lot of upper back strength. Your posture ends up being so forward and rounded and you get a lot of, upper back and neck pain.
Yeah.
Probably more so after having the baby, whereas during the pregnancy, it's more lower back, hips, pelvis. So I think doing a lot of those arm strengthening, upper back strengthening, they're safe to do when you're pregnant. And I think that they really help afterwards, definitely.
Yeah. Look, I mean, so when I play with my nephews, is that like I have to pick them up and everything like that. And they wriggle around. Yeah, they're definitely hard to hold and keep in place. Like I don't particularly find myself like a weaker person. So.
No, you're strong, but yeah. So you have this entire pregnancy where you do lose a bit of strength because you can't do as much. One thing you can work on is your arms though.
Yeah.
And probably some of your leg muscles too. I think it's invaluable. to be able to have that strength, because you just don't realize, and they do get quite heavy and they are quite wriggly.
There you go.
Yeah, so really important. And of course, afterwards as well, getting the abdominals back and pelvic floor is a priority. So, post-pregnancy, and teach about this in our courses too. You want global strength, obviously, to help you be able to be strong enough to deal with, all the things that require you to do when you're carrying a baby around. But, you really need those abdominals back. They have generally been very stretched and pelvic floor impacted too. So Pilates is literally the perfect exercise to do post-pregnancy, because main focus, as you know, is pelvic floor and abs. They're on with every movement that you do. Really getting people stretching and getting them to, stretch all those muscles that were quite tight through pregnancy. I honestly think it should be mandatory for everyone to do Pilates after having a baby.
Nice.
If not while they're pregnant too.
Just Pilates for everyone.
Yeah.